The Sunday school lesson for June 23rd, 2024 is Ruth meets Boaz. Ruth chapter 2, verses 8 through 18. To the viewers and subscribers, welcome to my channel, The Backstory and More. If you are interested in knowing what happens before each Sunday school class, you are at the right place. To the subscribers, thank you for subscribing to my channel. To the viewers, if you find it in your heart to subscribe to this channel, please do so. Thanks to everyone for making this channel grow one viewer and one subscriber at a time. The backstory takes us to Ruth chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. Ruth meets Boaz in the grain field. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." So she went out, entered the field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you," they answered. Boaz asked the overseer of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters.' She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." The backstory ends, and the lesson begins with the next slide. Verse 8. Then said Boaz unto Ruth, "Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens." Verse 9. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go unto the vessels, and drink of that which the young men have drawn. Verse 10. Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, "Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger?" Verse 11. And Boaz answered and said unto her, "It hath fully been shewed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore." Verse 12. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Verse 13. Then she said, "Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaidens." Verse 14. And Boaz said unto her, "At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar, And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. Verses 15 through 16. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. Verses 17 through 18. So she gleaned in the field until even, and beat out that she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up, and went into the city. And her mother in law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. A brief summary. Upon arriving in Bethlehem, Ruth quickly took the initiative of providing sustenance for herself and Naomi by gleaning in a field belonging to Boaz, a wealthy relative of Naomi's husband, Elimelech. When Boaz came from town to see how the harvesting was progressing, he noticed Ruth and learned of her identity. Verses 5 through 7. Boaz urged Ruth not to go to another field, but to remain among the servant girls and others who were gleaning after his workers. This invitation to glean only in his field gave a special authorization and legitimacy to Ruth's work. Further, Boaz protected Ruth from the danger of sexual harassment or worse, instructing his men not to lay a hand on her. Verse 22. Just as he greeted his employees with a blessing in God's name, he asked for God to abundantly bless Ruth for her demonstration of devotion to Naomi and for her own trust in God. Just as Ruth demonstrated her virtuous character in her choice to move to Israel with Naomi, here Boaz revealed his own compassionate and godly character as he offered Ruth both provision and protection. Boaz's expression, my daughter, indicates that Boaz was likely significantly older than Ruth. Further, Ruth's response of obedience highlights the vast difference between their social and economic statues. Boaz was a man of standing, a member of the upper class. He was a man of wealth who owned a field and employed workers. He was a leading citizen in his community. He was an Israelite, one of the chosen people of God. Ruth, on the other hand, was a foreign widow from a pagan background, trying to eke out an existence as a lower class worker, salvaging bits of grain from the harvest leftovers. Though they were different from each other in many ways, Boaz and Ruth did have two crucial traits in common: faith in God and virtuous character. Boaz had already offered Ruth means of protection and provision. Here Boaz went above and beyond expectations, showing Ruth extraordinary kindness. He invited her to eat with him and his employees, making sure she had a sufficient meal. Then he asked his workers to intentionally leave behind extra grain for her to pick up. And when Ruth was finished for the day, and she had beaten out the grain, pounded and shook it to separate the grain from the stalks, she had an ephah of barley. This was about 1 bushel, an unusually large amount for one person to gather in a single day. When she took the results home, plus what was left over from her lunch, it at once aroused Naomi's curiosity. Thank you so very much for watching. Join me soon for the next backstory and more. Stay safe and may God bless.